Today, we're going to get a first-hand account of the Buddha's journey to enlightenment, straight from the source. And this isn't just some story he told later on. It was actually his response, his argument, in a live debate with a really sharp, clever wanderer named Saccaka.
So here's how we're going to walk through this. It all starts with that debater's challenge. From there, we'll follow the Buddha's search for truth, dive into his really intense trials of asceticism, see the one key insight that changed absolutely everything, and then trace the final path to awakening. It all wraps up with his ultimate answer to Saccaka and, well, to the rest of the world.
All right, so let's set the scene. Our story kicks off with a confrontation. You've got Saccaka, a guy who is famous for his intellect and just loves a good argument. He doesn't come to the Buddha as a student. Oh no, he shows up as an intellectual rival, ready to put the Buddha's teachings to the test.
And Saccaka comes in hot with his main argument. He says, look, I've seen these ascetics who go through extreme physical pain, but if their mind isn't developed, that pain is just going to overwhelm them. It's a path to madness. He kind of suspects the Buddha's followers are doing the exact opposite. You know, all mind, no body.
Okay, so this is the absolute heart of Saccaka's whole point. He sees two things: cultivating the body, which in Pali is kaya bhavana, and cultivating the mind, chitta bhavana. For him, these are two totally separate, unrelated paths. And this very separation is what the Buddha is about to completely turn on its head.
The Buddha's response to this is just brilliant. He doesn't get into some lofty, abstract debate. Nope. He just tells his own story, starting right at the beginning, back when he was a young prince who decided to leave a life of total luxury behind.
So he goes out and finds the greatest meditation masters of his time. And he's a quick study. He masters their techniques, reaching these incredibly profound states like the sphere of nothingness. But he notices a huge flaw. These states, as amazing as they were all temporary. They were like a peaceful vacation for the mind, not a permanent solution to suffering. Even at the very top of what was considered possible, he knew this isn't it. This is not the final answer.
So what does he do? He leaves those teachers behind and sets off on his own, on a path of just extreme self-discipline. He figures, okay, I'm going to find the truth by totally conquering my body and mind through sheer willpower. He's about to push pain and deprivation to their absolute breaking point. It's during this time that three really powerful metaphors pop into his head. First, he imagines a piece of wood. It's wet, it's sappy, and it's literally sitting in water. You could try all day, but there is no way you're going to start a fire with that. And he realized that's like someone whose body and mind are still just drenched in sensual desires. You can't kindle wisdom in that state. Okay, next, he imagines that same wet piece of wood, but now you've pulled it out of the water and put it on dry land. Well, it's still soaked through, it's still not going to light. And he thinks, aha, that's like someone who has physically left the world, but inside, their mind is still just burning with craving. The fire of insight still can't catch. And then finally, he pictures a dry piece of wood way out on dry land, far from any water. Now that wood is ready to go up in flames. He realizes this is the person whose body is withdrawn from sensual pleasures and whose mind is let go of that inner craving. Only then are the conditions finally right for the fire of awakening.
And he put this into practice with a terrifying level of determination. He tried holding his breath until he had these excruciating headaches. He cut his food down to almost nothing. The text is brutally honest about what happened to his body. His limbs became like withered reeds, his spine was like a string of beads, and he could literally touch his stomach and feel his backbone. He was right on the edge of death.
So after 6 years of this, emaciated, weak, and about to die, he realizes something huge. This path is a total failure. All this self-torture hadn't brought him 1 inch closer to wisdom. And this moment of complete and utter collapse, it became the single most important turning point of his entire life.
Think about it. He had tried what he believed was the only path for a serious spiritual seeker, and he'd exhausted it. So he asks himself this simple but totally revolutionary question. What if? What if there's another way? And then a memory just surfaces out of nowhere. He sees himself as a little boy, sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree while some big festival was going on. And in that moment, with absolutely no striving, no effort, he'd just naturally fallen into this state of deep, meditative bliss, a feeling of pure, wholesome joy.
That memory was the spark. It was a massive insight. He realized he'd been treating all pleasure like it was the enemy. But this joy he felt as a child, that was different. It was blameless. It wasn't connected to craving or anything unskillful. And he asked himself, why am I afraid of that pleasure? He knew right then he couldn't reach that state with a body that was about to collapse. He decided to eat again, to get his strength back.
This insight, it changed everything. With his body nourished and his mind now aimed at this new middle way, he sits down under what we now call the Bodhi tree, and he makes this incredibly powerful resolution. I will not get up from this spot until I have found the ultimate truth.
So, remembering that feeling of blameless pleasure, he enters the first deep state of meditation, or jhana. That's the foundation. And from there, he systematically moves through 4 distinct stages. It's like climbing a ladder, where each step refines his focus and calms his mind even more. Now, this isn't about spacing out. It's about sharpening his mind into a perfectly stable, perfectly luminous tool, ready for the deepest insights imaginable.
With this incredibly focused and clear mind, he starts to look. Through the 3 watches of the night, he gains 3 profound knowledges, or vidya. First, he recalls his own countless past lives. Second, he sees how all beings are reborn according to their actions. And then finally, in the 3rd watch, he sees it. He understands the cause of all suffering, and he completely destroys the deep-seated mental taints, the asavas. You can think of the asavas as the mind's root malware, the greed, hatred, and ignorance that distort how we see everything. At that moment, he uprooted them forever.
So, having told his entire life story, the Buddha has now, without a single counter-argument, completely answered Saccaka's challenge. He has just shown him, through his own lived experience, what it really means to cultivate the mind and the body.
And this brings us right to the Buddha's final point. An uncultivated person, he says, is someone whose mind gets completely hijacked by pleasant or painful feelings. But a cultivated person, someone with an integrated body and mind, a bhavatakayo and bhavatacitto, they still feel life's ups and downs for sure. But those feelings don't invade the mind and take up residence. The mind stays steady. It stays free.
Saccaka is just totally stunned. He's won over. He admits that every other teacher he ever debated got angry, they got defensive. But he says, as he was challenging the Buddha's expression only became clearer. His radiance just grew. He was seeing the living, breathing proof of a mind that was completely and totally at peace.
You know, the Buddha story is so much more than just an ancient tale. It's a timeless lesson. He found that the real path to wisdom wasn't about choosing pain over pleasure. It was about finding this profound balance, a middle way that avoids the dead ends of both wild indulgence and brutal self-denial. And that same principle is just as powerful today, which kind of leaves us with a pretty good question to think about for our own lives.